Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
I want to introduce our next speaker, the keynote for Saturday night. He's James Cleveland, and many of you may know him as Robin Hood. He's been on CNN. Was it CNN that just had you on recently? CNN appearance recently. Of course, if you've been following the Robin Hood saga, you know of the huge international news coverage that has received and continues to receive. Of course, it has just gone to the Supreme Court. How much of this that he'll cover, I have no idea. Maybe he won't even talk about Robin Hooding. I don't know what he's going to talk about, but he's the Activist of the Year for 2013 here in Keene, which is sort of an activist-created honor that we vote on every single year, and he totally deserved it last year. It just has been an amazing doer, and that's what we need here in New Hampshire. Is we need people who are willing to take the initiative, people who are willing to start something, or take whatever is existing and take it to the next level. People with that drive, and James definitely has it. We need, if we have a dozen more Jameses move within the next year, it would be an amazing thing. So he's a real successful activist, and he's starting up a new business as well. And I'm not sure if he's going to talk about that, but that's been a bit of an adventure that's been very different from Robin Hooding. And he's starting a thrift store. So it's also something we need in New Hampshire is entrepreneurs, people with capital and the ideas to put behind it to create something new. He's starting a thrift store out on 101 as you're heading out to Marlboro. It's not officially open yet, but from what I understand, you will open it by appointment. So if somebody would like to come check out the new activist-run thrift store here in town, that is something that both he and Jay Freeville, who's sitting in the back, are working on together. James Cleveland, a.k.a. Robin Hood, come on up. It's great to have you here this year at Keenevention, and thank you, man.
Thank you. And we are going to be open Monday. Jay has laid down the law, so if you're still in town Monday, 10 a.m., we're going to do an opening, so feel free to stop on by. So I guess, so I moved to Keene about 2.5 years ago, and, I never considered myself an activist. This was all new to me, and, Ian has been a great kind of inspiration for me, and he asked me to do this panel, and I had self-doubts. What am I going to talk about? What about public speaking? Or do people care what I have to say? There's all these doubts that enter your mind. But I think really what I want to talk about tonight, and I'm not sure how much this has been talked about, is how do you achieve success in activism and pretty much everything that you want to do? And so I was just thinking, there's a couple factors that I think are just key if you want to become great in whatever you're doing. If you're running a business, if you're running for office, if you're an artist, whatever you're doing, there are certain characteristics, I think, and people learn them over time. I didn't start out great. Who the heck is this James guy? I moved to town, no one knows me. But it's through the people and doing things that you can achieve greatness. The most important factor, the number one thing that I came to the conclusion, if you want to be great, if you want to make a difference in this world, you have to be a maverick. You have to be independent-minded. If you look at any field, you look at business, the people that we all know and respect, the Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, Henry Ford, all the guys who built these empires, Oprah Winfrey, they went against the conventional wisdom. And I feel that's what Keene, is doing within the Free State Project. We're trying new things here. We're innovating. And we're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. No one is perfect. If you allow that fear, though, that self-doubt to basically negatively impact you, you'll never achieve anything. The thing that I decided is, and it's the reason I'm doing this speech tonight, I'm nervous. I'm on CNN. I've been on a couple major media now. I'm nervous. I'm sitting in there Wednesday morning. I'm saying, oh my God, I'm about to be on national news. Who knows how many people are watching? What if I say something stupid? What if I screw up? And you can't enter that negative frame of mind. You have to stay positive. And it's so critical. And if I made a mistake, who cares? Move on, learn from it. That is so key. I think if you look at any field, You look at religion. Let's say Jesus, Martin Luther King. The guys who made a difference went against the conventional wisdom. Picasso, no one would know who that guy is if he was boring, you know what I mean? If he did what everyone else did. So you have to be willing to take some risk and have courage and be willing to take the criticism, put yourself out there and make mistakes and learn from it and keep going. That is the key. And it's like that in any field. Science, let's say Galileo, he went against conventional wisdom. Columbus, it was stupid to do what Columbus did. He was doing something that no one had attempted before. But that's why pretty much everyone knows who he is. It's because he didn't do what everyone else did. And I think that's kind of like the secret of Keene, if you will. So the people here are just doers. Like Ian was saying, I'm a doer. Well, that's because I surrounded myself with doers. That's another important factor, community. You need to surround yourself with greatness, if you will, people who will lift you up, who will inspire you, who will motivate you to go out and do things. And the nice thing about the community here in Keene, and nowhere is perfect. There's no panacea. People are going to screw up. Let's say I've done stupid things in activism. Rich Paul has probably done stupid things. Ian, anytime you do something, eventually, you're going to do stupid things. You got to learn from it and say, you know what? That wasn't a smart idea. It's like a guided missile. So you're shooting for that target, whatever that target is. It doesn't just go straight to target. It's making corrections. And that's what you got to do. You got to keep that goal in mind and keep making your corrections. My goal, has always been I want to get as many liberty-minded people as I can to move here. And how do I achieve that? So the most effective way I decided was, we have to make news, if you will. We got to do things that will get the Free State Project out there and get people to know. And that's, whenever you put yourself out there, you're going to have people judge you. You're going to have people criticize you. There's going to be haters. We have haters here in town. If you're important enough to have fans, guess what? You're going to have haters. People, and I feel that it's invaluable, because imagine you went to a job review and all your manager said is all the great things you do. How are you going to improve yourself? I think it's great that we now have these people that are pointing out our weaknesses, pointing out our flaws. It's a great opportunity to learn. And you probably will notice it's almost all ad hominem. It's all just personal attacks and such. It's not an attack on like the arguments or the logic. If these people wanted to have that debate, let's go. I know Rich wants to have that debate with these people, but you have to have that courage you have that self-doubt, but you do it anyway. Ian said, I'm starting a business. I had a good job. I had a security. I had health insurance. I had dental insurance. But you know what? It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I said, so Steve Jobs, I remember he basically said that if you should kind of live your days as if today could be your last day. And if you're waking up in the morning and you're dreading what you have to do that day, maybe you need to change something. And that kind of always stuck with me. Like, wow, maybe I hate commuting an hour and a half. And I hate, it's not that I loved all the people I worked with. I liked the kind of work I was doing, but it wasn't right for me any longer. So I said, you know what? I've never run a retail business. I've never done this. But you know what? I'm going to try it. And if I fail, who cares? I'll just do something else. So I think that you have to be a maverick. You have to take risk. You have to have that courage to do all that. Another thing, a factor that is huge is self-improvement. You should take some time, like I said, like during a review. Every review I've ever been in, like a manager review, I tell them, tell me what's good, but I want to know what's bad. Like, how do I improve? What am I doing that I need to improve? And I've tried to keep that in mind. So it's easy for people to criticize. If you look at, let's take like a restaurant. There might be 1,000 people who go to that restaurant and have a great experience. But the one person has a negative experience, they're going to go online and review it negatively. And of course, businesses know that, so a smart business will do everything they can to make their customers happy, right? But I think it's critical to get that negative feedback. It's your chance to self-improve. And one thing, practice makes perfect. Like I said, I was no activist when I came up here. So I'm from Georgia, and it's kind of funny because the Libertarian Party of Georgia I was in a county of 100,000 people. So just for comparison, Keene maybe 20, 25,000 people. We had, on a good night, we'd have 10 libertarians show up. We had a meeting once a month at Ruby Tuesdays on Thursdays. We were lucky if we had 10 people show up. And unfortunately, the people that showed up, it was just like we'd complain and moan for an hour, and then it's like, see you in a month. That's kind of what the meetings boiled down to. So the county passed an ordinance that said you had to get a permit to hold a sign on the side of the road. So I was like, let's all go hold signs saying, I don't have a permit or something like that. No one would do it with me. They said, you're crazy. I was saying we have a great case here. This is clearly against the law. Let's go ahead and challenge this. They weren't willing to challenge it. I liked all the people there, but eventually, another guy moved who was a doer. My dad, he said the Libertarian Party of Conyers, Georgia is no more, or Rockdale County is no more. It's been, gone the way of history, I guess. They don't meet anymore. There's not enough people. So I think moving here to Keene really helped out on that motivation where I was surrounded by doers. I was surrounded by people who were saying, you know what, James, I'm not sure of that idea, but I'm willing to help you out and let's try it. December 2012, Daryl and Garrett Ian went out and they did some Robin Hooding. And I watched the video and I was like, wow, that sounds awesome. I want to go do that. Let's try that. And so I started going out in the beginning of the year with them. And it basically, I became hooked on it. I kind of became an addict, if you will. I mean, we all think that addicts are bad things, right? But the people who are successful are addicts. I mean, that's just a reality. Steve Jobs was an addict to building his company. Oprah Winfrey is an addict to building her empire. Michael Jordan was an addict to basketball. So there's nothing wrong with, committing yourself to putting in long hours and doing. And since I came here, I changed some things about me anyway. I lost 70 pounds recently. I went low carb. I did away with my TV. That was the best decision I ever made. Like, you don't need that stuff. I quit. I still have leisure time, but I used to play games hours and hours and hours. That stuff is fun. Don't get me wrong. I like to have leisure time, but at the end of the day, you're never going to remember the 10 hours a week you're putting into video games. You are going to remember, let's just say in my case, going to the New Hampshire Supreme Court or whatever you end up getting, whatever achievements you, and I had no intention of doing that. It kind of spiraled out of control. I was like, this is insane. Here I am, a boring guy. What is special about me? Nothing. I'm just a normal guy, and I started doing this Robin Hooding thing, right, with other people, and all of a sudden, it's like international media. It's all this craziness going on. I remember I sent Ian a message, and I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like when they filed the lawsuit, it was just like interview request after interview request. It was just insane. We couldn't handle it all. I was just nonstop doing interviews all over the world, Denmark, Spain, Germany. I got contacted this week. There's a show in Australia that wants us to come on. It's insanity, this whole journey, and that's kind of what, to me, like, I've decided that life is a journey, and I don't want to have any regrets. I want to end my life on E, if you will, my tank on empty. I want to put in all the effort I can, expend all the resources and energy. I don't want to say, oh, I should have started a business, let's say, in this new endeavor I'm going on. I should have taken a risk here. And sometimes things won't work out. I ran for state representative, and I put in a lot of effort. I had people helping me. We passed out over 3,000 flyers to the college students. I got 30 votes. 3,000 flyers, 30 votes. But I just said, you know what? That's an important lesson for me. The reality is, I should have caused a riot at the polling station, and then I would have got all the college kids would have came out there. But just joking. I mean, I learned an important thing that they didn't care about that. They would tell me on one hand they're going to vote, and then they didn't follow through. And I think, and even the people who are here right now for the Free State Project, even the people who are just visiting, you guys are like early adopters. So in technology, there's something called the adoption curve, and it's like a normal curve. And it's basically like, it's kind of the theory behind like how does a new technology get adopted or not. Right now, we're all taking risk. All of us who have moved or considering moving for the Free State Project, even if you haven't moved, you're still taking a risk. You're devoting time to this. You're kind of looking into it. Is this right for me? It's risky. You know, I moved, a lot of people moved thousands of miles. I moved away from my family. I had a job. Everything I knew, I took a risk on this. The people who are here now are risk takers. They're pioneers. You know, they're the kind of people who maybe they would have gone on Columbus's ship with him, or maybe they would have gone out west. I think it was Libertopia. There's some movie, There's No More Frontier. You know, now there's nowhere left unconquered, if you will. So we have to try different things. And that goes back to my original point. We have to go against the unconventional wisdom. And, you know, there have been things in Keene that have happened that I don't like, let's say. You know, there's been a lot of bad blood. But like I said, if you do things, and I've said this before, if you went out and held a picture of a flower, you know, someone eventually is going to give you negative feedback. So you're like the most mundane thing you can think of, like I have a flower, like a picture of a flower, get a job or like something eventually, someone will give you negative feedback. And if you, let's say you don't do any confrontational quote unquote activism, let's say all you do is produce media or you run for office, you're still going to get some pushback. People are going to leave nasty comments. The most important thing you can do, if it's not serious, like, oh, James, you have a tendency to laugh or something in your videos. Okay, that's true. Like, okay, I'll try not to do that moving forward. But I don't care. You know, it's like a personal attack on me. Who cares? If they're going to attack my argument or if they want to have a debate or discussion with me, that's fine. You know, I'll entertain that. And I think another thing, too, another factor, we have to dream big. So, you know, my workplace, we have a worksheet that we fill out. Here are your SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. My contention is we need to set dumb goals. Like, I want my business to earn $1 million. You know, I want to build an empire. Those are the kind of people who achieve things in life. If you set limits on yourself kind of artificially, you know, you're going to limit what you're going to be able to achieve. So I think if you want to achieve success in anything, like activism or whatever, you know, like my goal for Robin Hooding was parking is enforced Monday through Saturday. I want a Robin Hooder out there every single day parking was enforced. That was my goal from the beginning pretty much. And initially it was me. I was out there Monday at 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. through Saturday, 6 days a week. It was basically my job, if you want to call it that. It was my hobby, my passion. And then, you know, I recruited people to help me, and I kind of built it up, if you will. That's the kind of, you know, initiative that we need. And you don't have to, you know, go balls to the wall and get arrested. I got arrested recently for filming the police. I didn't want to get arrested. That wasn't my intention. But I still don't want to get arrested. That's scary to me, you know. That's something I've not experienced. And, well, I guess now I've experienced it. And it's kind of funny. It's like that fear of the unknown. In my mind, it was far worse than the reality. And I think that's true for so many things in life. I mean, like, think about even moving here. Like, what if I don't get a job? What if I don't have any friends? What if people hate me? The community hates me. What if? If you start building up all those, well, I would do this, but that's like you're basically creating limits on yourself, and you're not going to do anything. Ideas are important, but they're 1%. Effort and action is 99% of life. So if you have ideas and you never act on them, the reality is you're no better than someone who never had those ideas. If you have principles and you don't live by them, and I'm not perfect, I try to live the best I can, right? I try not to harm anyone else. I try not to steal. I try not to fraud. If I say I'm going to do something, I try to do it. Of course, I make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But if you just have the idea like, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to do this great activism project, that's a good idea. That's good. That's just 1% though. You got to go out there and you got to do. And people say, well, I don't know how to do that. Okay, task, learn how to do this. I don't know how to create a website. Learn how to create a website. I don't know how to design a flyer. And one great thing about a community is you can say, hey, is there anyone that knows how to do this? Does anyone know how to film better than me? Does anyone know how to, let's say Conan, and that's another thing, like motivation. I'm inspired by people like Conan, Rich Paul, Derek J, Rapture. So Rapture has been doing like Don't Take the Plea, jury outreach for years. He's never gotten like the spotlight, if you will, but what a solid guy, you know what I mean? It's people like that who inspire me. And if you surround yourself with people like that, and you kind of learn, like Johnson, fantastic graphic designs. I don't know how many of you guys saw my flyer, but that was Johnson's design. And it was just a great design. I made one up myself, and it was okay. It was just like standard words and stuff. But so I think you should find out what you're good at, and you don't have to go out and film the police. You don't have to be confrontational. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes guys who contribute IT expertise, graphics design, audio expertise, even like just cooking a meal for someone every now and then. There are small things you can do. You could lick envelopes for a political campaign. You can go out and, hold a sign. There's all these little things that will really add up in the long run. So I guess my message on that dream big, you don't want to have regrets at the end of the day. You don't want to say to yourself, and we've all experienced that, I'm sure, like, oh man, I should have done X. Instead, I did Y. And if it's because of fear, if it's because of, I don't know the future, that's what successful people do at the end of the day. They say, I have all these self-doubts. I don't know what I'm doing, but you know what? I'm going to learn. If it's really important to you, if you have a passion for it, make mistakes. Go out and do activism. And let's say in Keene, we've pissed some locals off. Okay, well, what can we do now? Maybe we shouldn't do that again. We learn from it. I would say that since I've been here, it's moved in a positive direction. Even though we have now had this Stop Free Keene group, like I said, I think it's beneficial. And it's funny because like they point out all these things from years ago. And it's like people don't even live here that did these things. You know what I mean? It's like, did you ever see me out there topless on the square? Not that I think anything's wrong with that. I don't care, but that's not something I'm interested in. But, oh well. So I think it's how to achieve success in activism would just be to go out and do. And I think that's what Keene does pretty well. I've kind of compared Keene, I've kind of made the analogy that, and I kind of hate to do this, but it's kind of like the special forces, right? They're kind of like the tip of the spear. The people here are outnumbered. They're in the most hostile territory. Like Keene is probably one of the worst, quote-unquote, places in New Hampshire to try to change things. But on the other hand, you have the epicness created. Like I go back and I watch these 420 rallies, and oh my God, like just pure epicness. Like talk about awesomeness, and it inspires me to keep going. And you're going to have down points. When I was arrested, I'm saying, oh, what am I going to do now? Those negative thoughts start entering your brain. Now I'm facing charges. Now I'm facing fines. I'm going to lose my job. All those bad things start going. And I just made a decision, like I made this decision. So basically what happened was I was standing in an area filming the police. And I'd already moved back at the request of one officer. And the supervisor came. He told me I needed to move back further. And basically, I said, sir, I'm not trying to cause a ruckus or whatever, but I'm acting as the press, and I'm going to respectfully decline. I feel like I have a safer move. Best I can tell, I was 80 feet away when I went out and measured it. How far away do I have to be? And that's not from the scene. That was from their outside barricade. So I basically made a decision on principle that freedom of the press is important to me. And even though I had the worst possible shot, if I had known I could see the action on the other side, I wouldn't have been there. I couldn't see anything. I was filming the backs of officers. It was terrible. But I made a decision, and I decided, I've got to live with this now. And now it's like I'm going to stand on principle, and I didn't do anything wrong. And if they're not going to drop the charges, I'm going to fight it, if you will. I'm going to argue my case in court. And maybe I lose, I don't know, but eventually you kind of overcome that fear. So I mentioned earlier I was on CNN. I was afraid. I got possibly millions of people watching me. I can't even see the host or anything. All I see is a camera in my face. Like there's a little screen where you can see yourself. That's all I could see. I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know what they're showing on the screen. But I just said, whatever they ask me, whatever. I don't care. I'm getting exposure. If I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. I can recover from this. So that's kind of what I feel like people, myself included, all my life I've been afraid. And moving here, being with the people here, it's like I'm no longer afraid. I've gained courage, if you will. The people here inspired me to say, you know what? I'm going to take some risk. I'm going to buck the system a little bit, if you will. Those are the people you remember. People told Michael Dell, your business model's insane. You can't sell computers directly to consumers. No one does that, Mr. Dell. I'm a business student, so I get to read all these, but, and he said, okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and then he's a huge success, right? Howard Schultz, the guy that started Starbucks, he was denied 242 times by banks for applications for loans. 242 times. Basically the guy just said, I have this idea, I'm not giving up. I can keep failing and failing and failing and failing. And he may have failed another 500 times, and Starbucks may have never succeeded, but he just said, this is important to me, I'm going to keep going. If I don't achieve more liberty in my lifetime, at least I tried. That's what's important to me. I'm going to try, and I don't know the best solution. I'm going to run for office. I'm going to go out in Robin Hood. I'm going to do cop blocking. I'm going to produce media. I don't know what's going to work. No one has done this before is the way I look at it. This is fascinating because this is kind of a new thing. There's been other political migrations in history, but there's never been anything, to my knowledge, I guess you could say kind of the hippie movement in Vermont. They kind of moved but it wasn't necessarily a concerted effort. People weren't saying, I'm going to move here and try to change things for what I want. And I think that's another thing. We have to have a vision of what we want the world to be. If you have an idea, it's going back to that SMART goals thing. You should set dumb goals. You should be like, I want a freer society. Shoot for the top. You don't make it. Okay, well, you made a lot of progress along the way. I don't know if the society I ever want to see is ever going to come about. But, basically, I'll be damned if I'm going to sit down and just say, oh, well, some people in Keene are posting negative things about me. I guess I should give up. I guess I should just call it a day. I'll pack all my stuff. I'm going to move home. And I'm just going to sit down and shut up. That's what they want you to do. And that's Gandhi, sit down and shut up. The British have ruled forever. You're not going to change that. Martin Luther King Jr., shut up. Sit down and shut up. We have things going pretty well for us. You're screwing it up for us. You're causing tensions. There was a lot of damage done in the civil rights. Carla was talking about the civil rights movement last night. People were killed. There was property destroyed. There was real damage, and I don't want any of that. I don't want people to have conflict. That's the last thing I want. I want people to live peacefully. That's the whole reason I do what I do. I believe in accountability. That's one of the worst things about government, as most of us are aware, is the unaccountability of its agents, the unaccountability of the things the people who work for it do. I often ask the question, I've had people talk to me about so the Colbert people came and they're shooting, and the guy said, "Do you guys hate police?" And I said, no. I have an uncle who's a police officer. I have 2 cousins who are police officers. I don't hate police. That's ridiculous. There are certain things I hate that they do. And he's like, "Well, don't you believe that we need police?" And I said, "Well, I believe we need security and protection." I said, "Let me ask you, do you get nervous when the police get behind you?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Oh," and he didn't really have a good answer. And I said, "Well, maybe it's because you don't exactly trust them. Maybe you have some doubts about them as well. And all I'm asking for, all I want is self-determination. Is that too much to ask for? I want to be able to choose what kind of system that I live under. I don't want people running around killing each other. I don't want people setting things on fire. I was out there at the Keene State riots. That was bad behavior on all parties involved. I will say about 90% of the college students, I would say, were peaceful. They were just drunk. There was agitators who were acting up. They're kind of using the crowd as an excuse to do terrible things. And, I don't appreciate them. So Jason Rapture, to me, is absolutely heroic. I haven't reviewed the footage yet, but these college students dropped a pole, and they picked it up, and they started using it as a battering ram through people's car windows. And Rapture, he basically risked his life. He had more courage than I did in that fact. I just wanted to film it. He went in there and he said, "Stop, quit doing this." And they dropped the pole, and then he was trying to film the people's faces. I said, "Rapture, I was pulling away. You're about to get beat up." And he's like, I said, "If you want to do anything, film the faces." And I meant do it from afar. He was running up to him, and so then 6 guys were confronting him. And it was heroic in my opinion. So, people who believe in more freedom, we don't want destruction. At least I don't. People I hang out with don't. We just want the right to choose, self-determination. If someone wanted to have an Islamic state, an Islamic government, I don't care. Go ahead and do that. Leave me out of it, let's say. I just want to be able to consent to things as I think about them and agree to them. Don't murder people. I'll consent to that one. That sounds great. I want to live in a society where people don't kill each other. That's a good rule, right? Maybe some people won't consent to that, and that's fine. They'd have ways of addressing that, right? So I guess to wrap it up here, there's a lot of pressure to conform. Society, our whole lives, we're told to conform. You learn in school, don't be different. Don't buck the system. You get good marks if you do the right thing, which is, of course, obey authority and do exactly what you're told, and don't be any different. Your peers, you're wearing the wrong clothes. You're different than us, so there's peer pressure. There's a fascinating experiment called the Asch conformity experiment. So some of you guys may have heard of the Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiment. There's a great one, if you're not aware of it, it's called the Asch conformity experiment. And it was conducted in 1951. And what it was it was a experiment to determine how much of a role does peer pressure cause for people. Will people conform based on their peers. And what it was he had a bunch of lines, and it was supposedly a vision test, quote unquote. And you can go watch videos from it. It's fascinating to watch it. And there's like 3 lines, and 2 of the lines were the same length, and one of them was shorter or longer. And basically, you're supposed to identify the anomaly. And there's Confederates. So there's only one real person being experimented on in this experiment. There's something like, I think it was actually 12 people, so it was like a jury, if you will. But what they found was absolutely fascinating. So they'd start the experiment, and everyone would be saying, like, okay, line C is the short one, is the odd one. Line B, line A. And eventually you get to the point where the entire group of Confederates, let's say that C was the correct answer, they'd all say B. And it's absolutely fascinating to watch the reaction of the person being experimented on, because they're looking confused. Am I missing something? So everyone's saying C, 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 C. And it gets to the guy, and almost every single time, he goes with the group. He says C. So he ignores reality, and he gives in to peer pressure. So what I think is important, and what I've always found fascinating about Keene, is Keene says, you know what, screw you all, it's B. B is the correct answer. I'm not giving in to this. And if you do that, you're going to be unpopular. You know, people aren't going to like that. People are going to say, what did you say? Oh my God, you can't say that. You know, you can't speak the truth. We don't want to hear that. And you know, we're not perfect. The Liberty folks here aren't perfect. Maybe we're wrong on some issues. That's fine. Let's have that discussion if you want to have a discussion. But to me, it's like I decided at some point in my life that, and I had to overcome a lot of programming. So 13 years of public school, I was like, I was almost like on welfare, right? So 13 years of public school, I go to a public university, I have an Army's paying for it, the state of Georgia's paying for it because I have a contract to commission as an officer in the Army. So, you know, I have an enlistment. I was like rolling it in. I had all this money. It was great. I was buying all this stuff, hanging out all the time. But like Ron Paul kind of woke me up, and I made a tough decision. And I said, you know what? I don't agree with the mission of this organization anymore. I can't follow through with my commitment. I can't go through with this in commission and be part of an organization that I don't believe in the mission for. So I made a tough decision. And my dad is a retired Army major. So, you know, basically a good portion of his life was in the Army. And it was very difficult. So my brother didn't go into the military. My sister didn't have any. So I felt like it was my obligation. I have to do this. It's like a family tradition. There's a lot of pressure. And even though, like, my parents necessarily, they wouldn't have cared if I'd done it one way or the other, but I made a decision, and I said, I'm not going to go through with my commitment. And my dad, he said, you made the right decision. And so I feel like people, you might think they'll doubt you, but if they truly care for you, they'll support you. My parents are great in that regard. They said, I don't care what you do with your life. That's basically what my parents told me. Of course, my mom, it's like this for everyone, I think. Derek and I were chatting about it, but my mom always worries. She's kind of learned over time that I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want to do. Like, okay, yeah, I'll consider that. Thanks, Mom. My dad was always like, I don't care what you do. Go do whatever the hell you want to do. But, they both support me, and I think that was important. And I think that it's important, too. So maybe there's been bridges burned between people in the Liberty community And a lot of people are suffering some serious hardships. And people I've had disagreements with, they show up to my court dates. So at the end of the day, when the chips are down, I feel like this community, I can really say, wow, even though we don't see eye to eye, at least they're going to say, at the end of the day, we're going to support you. The state's coming after you or whatever. So I found that fascinating, but I kind of lost my train of thought. But anyway, so I guess I'll close out here just by saying that I appreciate everyone's time. And you don't have to move to Keene. You don't have to move to New Hampshire. But I would just please do something. You don't have to put in hours and hours and hours of your life towards liberty. But if it's important to you, if we all claim, that we want a freer society, that at least most of the people I hang out with, we want a better society, that's not going to come around from sitting around and doing nothing. We have to take actions. We have to at least try to do what Gandhi said and basically be the change we want to see in the world. It starts internal. If you're waiting on external events to happen, you're going to live your entire life with regret. If you're waiting on people to ask you out, you're never going to go on any dates. If you're waiting on someone to hire you, it ain't going to happen. You have to go out there and you have to put in the effort. And I think we should try everything. I don't know what's going to work. Run for office. Do whatever makes you comfortable. Do whatever your niche is. And so that's just the final thought I'd like to leave everyone with. Just do something. All right, thank you very much.
Would you mind taking questions?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
You have any questions? You can ask me any questions. It doesn't have to be about what the speech was. You can ask me about activism, living here in Keene, whatever you want. Yes, sir, Mr. Brian.
Yes, my name is Brian Hetchie. I moved to Merrimack, New Hampshire a year and a half ago. And I'm looking for a job, by the way. Sales engineer. Anyway, my question is, how do you balance your activism with your job? For example, I worked with a guy who had a son who, I forget what he did. This is like years ago. He ended up getting in trouble because his son did something, and he stood up for his son. And he said that he thought his son did the right thing, and it ended up causing him a lot of trouble at work, that this guy had to miss out time from work because I don't know if he had to go to court or whatever. But people, especially when they get older, they get other commitments, families, responsibilities, whatever. How do you balance activism life with the rest of your life? Thank you.
Oh, I'd say you've touched on one of the most difficult things, I think, in life. So the most limited resource in the universe for all of us is time. And I'd say one attribute of successful people is time management. And it's something everyone struggles with. People procrastinate. I procrastinate. I forget things. So it's very difficult to do that. I would say the best motivator. So people do the things that are important to them. So, if you find something that's important to you, you're going to make time for it. That's just the reality. So, like if you're doing an activism and you're saying, every time you're like, oh God, I got to wake up and I got to go do this. Maybe you should not sacrifice yourself and reassess what's important to you and say, you know what, I'm in over my head. I'm going to be honest with myself. I've got to make a change. Or, you've got to change your work. I ran into that situation recently. The company I was working for, nice company. I liked all the people. I liked the kind of work I was doing. I was commuting, and I was putting in a lot of hours. And I said, I kind of came to the conclusion. I said, I'd rather take the risk of making less money and have a better quality of life. It's risky to do that, but I would say that's very difficult. And if you do have a family, if you do have a full-time job or a job where you're salaried, putting in long hours, you don't have to necessarily go out and do activism. You can contribute what you can, kind of deal. Yeah, and then of course you could find people who do have that time. So it's like a division of labor kind of deal. So it's not worth my time to learn how to fix my oven. I'm going to hire that out because it's not worth my time. My time's too valuable for me. And if your family is most important to you, I would say you should prioritize your family. If your career is most important to you, prioritize your career. All of us have hobbies. I guess I would say you should try to just maybe eliminate one hobby and then maybe put in just a little bit of liberty. You could. I don't have the perfect answer.
So I've actually got a couple of questions. One of them just came to my mind. You said that all of us have hobbies. It seems as though all you ever do is work, sleep, and liberty. So what are your hobbies?
Oh, so that's a good question. I would say I'm unusual in the sense that I do have leisure time. I started watching Gotham recently. A good, nice TV show, let's say. So one of the criticisms, or I guess not a criticism, one of the points I've always gotten in every job review I've ever had, all my professors told me this throughout my education, teachers would tell me this, said, you take on too much. And it's true, and it's like some areas suffer because I do that. And it's something I've always struggled with. It's a weakness, as well as a strength, right? Because on one hand, I'm getting a lot done in one area, but then everything else is falling by the wayside.
So the actual question that I wanted to ask about, you touched kind of on the fact that your parents thought you were kind of crazy for coming up and doing activism stuff. I don't think you actually mentioned what your very first thing of activism was in New Hampshire, and I was kind of involved with that. So tell that story.
Oh, so I think you're referring to the very first, quote unquote, what I would consider activism I ever did. Well, I guess you could say it's a second, because they had the Cheshire County Fair, and I was like, oh, I'll go do some outreach. Like, okay, I've kind of done something like this before. On the way back, Daryl got pulled over by KPD, so I filmed it, and I was nervous, and you can actually watch the video, Lightspeed Liberty. It's one of my first videos. It's horrible. It's I'm shaking, the audio's terrible, the video, but you learn and you get better at it. And someone like Garrett, the people who are good at stuff, help me with this, please. That's what, going back on that whole self-improvement thing, you should learn from the best. And that's one of the issues I would contend is wrong with public education. So in all the other fields, we all listen to let's say Elvis Presley, great musician, or Beethoven. We listen to those guys. Not every town has a bard anymore. So that's always been one of my complaints about public education. You should learn from the best math teacher. We have the technology. Why aren't we doing it? Or I guess it shouldn't be even a we question. Me, if I was a parent, I would be I'm going to try to make sure my child learns from the Khan Academy or whatever. But, all right, Matt?
Recently, I posted in the KeeneX group an idea that would perhaps be the Robin Hooding of speeding. Basically, I have a bachelor and a master's in electrical engineering, and I'd like to put that to use. And so what the idea would be basically put the word out, if anyone gets a speeding ticket, to contact me. But I also have a flow chart in my head, and the idea would be file a discovery motion as soon as you get the ticket. And I don't know what that entails, so this question is not only for you, but also be for Daryl and Ian and everybody else who's had a lot of experience with the court system. So first question would be, what does discovery entail? Are there any onerous fees? Do you have to be a lawyer to do it? Is it relatively straightforward? So basically a discovery motion for the model number, the manufacturer of the LiDAR or the radar device. Get that right away, contact me, and then I would do research on that, any documented issues. Then the second question would be, do you think it would be difficult to subpoena the manufacturer for any information on potential flaws with the device, the schematics, and so forth? And so those two we could do no matter what. And then the third item would be, are expert witnesses allowed for speeding cases, or is that considered like too pissant to have an expert witness? Does it have to be like a felony or some sort of serious misdemeanor? But even if the answer to that is no, definitely do those first two things. Or even if you're not, even if if you can't subpoena, or if you subpoena and they say it's like some trade secret, you could say, well, we're being denied due process, and bring that up on your court date. So at the very least, you should be able to file some sort of discovery motion. So I'm just putting all this together in my head, and that's sort of my flow chart is, solicit, anybody, you have a speeding ticket in New Hampshire, do that. Even if I'm not allowed to testify, I can do like the research and give you some things to bring up at your court date. So anybody else who wants to chime in, Daryl, I know you have a lot of experience.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm not a legal expert.
Mainly discovery.
My understanding on discovery is that you don't have to be a lawyer. You can file it. You can.
No fees?
It's actually a request for discovery.
Yeah.
And what they've started doing randomly is just sending people a DVD, like putting everything on a CD and saying, you owe us $5 because we put this on a CD, even though you didn't request it in the form of a CD. And I actually had an instance to where they sent me the CD. I got it 10 days before trial. They're supposed to have it to you 14 days before trial. I brought that up during the trial, and they said, well, you should have filed a motion, but all motions have to be filed 10 days beforehand. How am I supposed to file a motion 10 days beforehand that I didn't get this 14 days beforehand because, the days? So what they might do is try to charge you. As far as subpoenaing somebody, there is a fee on that if you have to subpoena somebody through the court process. That would definitely be more complicated. You would also have to send the state and the court the list of witnesses that you wish to use at least 14 days before the trial.
But so, my thinking is that the identity of the device that's, supposedly incriminating you would be the absolute most basic thing. They should have to give that to you if you, that's what's, supposedly proving you did something wrong. So I would think a discovery, they would have to, if you file a request for discovery, that would be the absolute, like a mandatory thing that you'd be entitled to. So,
I suppose it wouldn't hurt to try it. I think it'd be cool to have them bring in the device into court and, I want to inspect this thing, and but that'd be fascinating. Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the difficulties you have had in opening the storefront?
Yes, so I would say that so as someone who wants to go into business, it's already difficult enough to try to say, oh, here's what I'm going to offer, the product and service, here's how I'm going to do it, here's my niche, here's the current business environment, and here's how I'm going to compete, and here are the key personnel I'm going to have, and there's just here's how I'm going to market, here's how I'm going to keep track of the accounting, here's the capital I got, and how I'm going to spend it, how I'm going to budget it. There's all these things, right, that you already have to do. I'd say one of the more, probably what Mr. Freeman is referring to, there's a lot of hurdles, as we're all aware, from the government. I mean, it's unfortunate that it's annoying, okay, I didn't know I had to get a sign permit. I thought I could just put a sign up. You know what I mean? Oh, surprise, you can't do that, and we're going to threaten you with fees if you don't take it down. Or surprise, you have to now get a fire inspection if you change the tenant status. And I'm an accountant. I've done taxes for 5 years. I'd say I'm pretty good at compliance. But it's just mind-boggling how much regulatory hurdles there are. And New Hampshire is not even that bad. I mean, let's be realistic. But it's so annoying. And it's like, we're ready to open our doors. And now we have to delay it because the government has stepped in and decided to help us. It was kind of funny too, and maybe I should, I guess I won't name names, but the fire department sends me an email, and it's like, thank you for including the Keene Fire Department in your new business venture. And I was thinking, I didn't include you. You guys are including yourself. Like, what is this nonsense? But unfortunately, we're having to kind of comply. And I'd say another thing that I've thought about, as a group, as people, we need to become wealthy. That is more freedom. If I had 5 stores, if I had $1 million, maybe I'd say, you know what? I'm going to try to fight this. I'm going to try to say, you know what? This sign permit is BS. And this fire extinguisher, if I have the tag on it, it's legal. I'm going to pull the tag off it. Now it's somehow different. How many people have gone into like a business and said, I need to see your fire extinguisher tag? Oh, so there's one person that's done that.
Only because I used to work security, and that was one of the things that I had to do at a couple of the places.
I mean, like it's just annoying that it's even that way, and I don't feel like these people are helping me. I feel like that it's an obstacle to overcome, and that's one thing in life. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, and maybe one day, I'd like to change it. I'd like to, let's have more liberty in the area of business. I don't want places to catch on fire and people to die, but it is just ridiculous. So the fire code is something like, it's over 600, 700 pages. It's like, I'm not going to read this. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous, this whole legal structure that's been built up. But, okay. Rob?
First off, very inspiring keynote. Really
thank you.
Moving. You spoke about how Ron Paul woke you up.
Yep.
But what inspired you to move here? Like, what specific events or moments? Like, what was it that made it click that you needed to be here?
Yeah, so my history, I would probably say in about 2007, I kind of started hearing about this Ron Paul guy, and I said, a lot of what he's saying makes sense, and I think like the more and more, it was like I was hooked, right? I started reading, I started watching YouTube videos. I started saying, wow, I think this whole liberty thing, I think there's something to this. And then I think it was like John Stossel or someone did a piece on the Free State Project. Like someone from the Free State Project was on there, he did a piece on it or something. And I Googled that, and I found Dave Ridley. And I started watching all these like Ridley videos, and like what a great avenue to get into. But I came to PorcFest in 2011, and I was like, wow. And it's unusual because a lot of people are like Free Talk Live. I'm showing up at PorcFest, and all these people are like, Free Talk Live, Free Talk Live. Like, who the heck are all these? Who's Free Talk Live? Who the hell are these people? But so then, like, I listened to Free Talk Live for like a year. Like I was still working and like commuting or whatever. I'd listen to it. But I'd say after PorcFest, I was like, wow, I don't have to explain basic things to people like you shouldn't use guns to get your way. Like the most basic things, like people understand that, So I was pretty much hooked on the community, the people I met, and even like the people I met, like I was planning on moving to Manchester. I didn't. What is this Keene stuff? But then a guy, Stephen Prince, he said, "Oh, just come to Keene, see if you can get a job. Just hang out here a week." So it's like, oh, and then Daryl, I think, at PorcFest 2011 or 12, he's like, "Yeah, you can probably get a job. Just come to Keene." Come check it out. So, it was not really any pressure or anything. It was just like, okay. And then like I was here for a week. I just applied to jobs like all week. That's all I did. I lived in the Keene Inn. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd just boom, 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 boom. And then I'm like, okay, I guess it's time for me to leave. I got to go back to work. I'm like driving home. I get 3 job interviews on the way home. So I go home and I just like load my car up. And I didn't plan it at all, which was not a good idea. I still got stuff at home. 2.5 years later, like I want that stuff, but I don't have it. So whatever. So I came back up here, I told my employer, I appreciated working for you. And I had kind of given him notice. So when I went to PorkFest 2012, I said, I'm going to be up there a few weeks. I may or may not come back. And so I called my boss and I was like, yep, looks like I'm not coming back. Nice knowing you kind of deal. So I would say Dave Ridley, Ron Paul. I think there's probably a lot of folks, and I would say, even if you run for I know in Keene we get criticized for running for political office, it's hopeless, you people are wasting your time. But there have been people I've met here in Keene that say that's how they find out, they meet you. They kind of find out what you're about is because you ran for office. That's still for most people, that's still a legitimate thing to do. I'm running for office and people I'm working with are like, oh, you're running for office. That's great. You know what I mean? It's it's just hilarious. And it's I'd say that's another thing. People, you worry, myself, I worry so much about what other people think. I'd say we should all become the honey badger, right? We got to get that tough skin. So I get arrested and, I'm worried, oh, what am I coworkers gonna say and blah blah blah. They all think it's funny, they're all like, ha ha ha, you got arrested, and oh, we all love the Robin Hood. They don't care. That's just the reality. They're just it's because they knew me as a person. They knew that I'm a solid guy, and that's just, it's I worry people worry so much about what other people think. To me, part of maturing is I don't care. I don't have to wear the right clothes anymore. I'm going to be myself. That's what, I care about liberty, damn it. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to apologize for saying that I believe that, whatever. I believe that we shouldn't start wars around the world, or maybe we should not use threats to make our neighbors do things. I'm not going to apologize for that. And I make mistakes, and maybe if I've wronged someone, please come to me. That was the most insulting thing to me about the whole Robin Hood lawsuit. The city didn't talk to any of us that I'm aware. They just filed a lawsuit. Talk about an unneighborly thing to do. You know what I mean? That basically is saying to me, you're an unreasonable person, and we're not going to try to talk to you at all. If I've wronged you, that's fine. Let's have a chat about it. Maybe I disagree, and then you filed a lawsuit. You know what I mean? The first course of action, in my opinion, shouldn't be, oh, you got some code violation, I'm going to run to the government. Go talk to your neighbor. I think it's unfortunate that, and I admit it myself. Well, now the place I live now, I do know the folks behind me and upstairs, but there's been so many places I lived, I never met the neighbors. That's an activism you could do right there. So meet people, and then maybe they find out you're a free stater. And they say, oh, maybe you guys aren't so bad. You're an okay guy. Some of you guys are crazy, but maybe, you know what I mean? It's kind of one of those deals. Okay, Aaron?
You said a lot of great things. One of the criticisms I hear a lot in the Free State Project is that they need more businesses to stand up for freedom. And I was wondering how starting a business may have changed your perspective.
Yes, so there's definitely, I can understand why business owners say, I'm going to comply with the government. It's very scary I have thousands of dollars on the line. I got people depending on me. I got commitments that I've made. I have leases, and I have all these things, and I want to be known as someone who keeps my word. I want to do the right thing. If I say I'm going to have a lease with you, I'm going to do everything I can to pay that lease. I'm going to, and so it's like it's a lot of pressure, right, when they do crack down on you, and it's unfortunate. I think that's part of the secret, if you will. Like, government knows that. They know that they can strong arm the businesses, and as a group, business owners are kind of like landlords. They're unpopular. Most people aren't business owners, and whether that's by design or not, I think a lot of that is by design through things like zoning, through things like licensing. I mean, it's very difficult to start your own business, unfortunately. You should be able to, buy a oven and start making bread for your neighbors. Like, let's be realistic. And if they say, I have health concerns, say, okay, you don't have to buy it from me. That's fine. It's like like, let's say the haters, they don't come shop at my business. That's fine. I don't care. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me. Don't come shop at my business. It'd be like, I'm not going to shop at your business because you're Jewish. Okay, and I'm not Jewish. It's bigotry to me. I don't want to interact with you if you're going to be a bigot. So I'm fine, with that. But, oh well. Yes, sir.
What is the current status of the Robin Hood lawsuit, or do you want to talk a little more about that?
Sure. So, I guess real quick, just to recap, in April or May of 2013, the city of Keene filed a lawsuit against myself and 5 other people. They claim we were harassing, intimidating, and threatening their parking officers, which, by the way, are all criminal actions, and they filed a civil case against us. If it's a criminal matter, why didn't you file criminal charges? You know what I mean? So I would say that most of it is basically bumpkiss anyway. Most of the stuff they cite never happened, and they had really no evidence. It was all, in my opinion, hearsay. And our courtroom strategy, and at first I vehemently disagreed with the attorney, John Meyer, on this. He said, I'm just going to let them say whatever they want to say. We're not going to challenge them on any of it. They could say that you were walking around in, I don't know, well, he didn't say this, but, walking around in Nazi uniforms and screaming at them all day or whatever, the most offensive things. Let them say it, because when it's dismissed, it's going to be a much stronger case for freedom. So I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. So, we let them just say whatever they're going to say for 2 or 3 days. They presented quote unquote evidence. The evidence we presented, what I would contend is real evidence, was of course objective video. So the parking officers, initially when we first started Robin Hooding, they filmed us. I don't care, film me, that's fine. I'm not doing anything wrong. I guess the government use that logic too, but I really didn't mind it. I think it's good. Keep me accountable, I'll keep you accountable. They quit filming us, which I took as a sign of, oh, okay, they now know what we're doing. I introduced myself. I said, here's why I'm doing this. Here's what I'm doing. I'm James. Nice to meet you kind of deal. So I took it as a sign they're more comfortable around us. And then the city hires the former police captain to follow us around and video record us. Apparently that's a really bad thing to do to someone, right? And then, yet now the former police captain's following us around when the parking officers aren't even there. You know what I mean? And I said to him, sir, I'd like you to stay 500 feet away from me. And he didn't comply with that. But anyway, I went to Superior Court. The judge reviewed the evidence. They filed a second case against us asking for money. The judge just reviewed the facts. It didn't even make it to trial. It was evidentiary hearings to see if it should go to trial. So it was 4 days. And it was interesting. It was kind of a neat experience. It was my first time in court, so I was nervous and I don't know what's going to happen. And I got to sit up in the front, but oh, okay, I get to sit up front, and this is interesting. And so he dismissed it. The city appealed it to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. our attorney told us that it would be like a year-long process. That's pretty much what it was, I believe. So they appealed it sometime late last winter, 2013, I believe. And just recently they heard it, so maybe a 9-month, if I had to guess. Now the Supreme Court is going to review the evidence. And kind of what it's now hinging on is it's become an issue of are these buffer zones allowed, and like if so, what are the parameters? And like my contention is the U.S. Supreme Court has basically struck down what's called floating buffer zones. So you can't have a zone that just moves around. So you can. So according to the U.S. Supreme Court, and whether or not we disagree with this or not, a fixed zone is fine, but a floating one is not. So I guess they're now going to determine if a floating buffer zone is acceptable or not. But who knows? Who knows what the outcome will be? It's not something I really worry about. I mean, best case scenario, I guess, would be that New Hampshire Supreme Court throws the case out and the city doesn't appeal it further. Who knows? Maybe it'll go to a federal court too. I don't know. You know, it's already gone farther than I ever imagined it would go. It's like, really, are we really devoting this time to having these conversations? Like, you know, like we get criticisms like, aren't there more important issues than parking? It's like, yeah, tell the city that. Like, like tell them, like, why do we only get that criticism? You know what I mean? It's like you guys or people are like, oh, you're wasting taxpayer resources. It's like, I didn't file a lawsuit. You know what I mean? And I'm going to defend myself. You know, I'm not just going to say, okay, I'm going to comply when I feel like I've done nothing wrong. But are there any other questions? I don't know if that answered your question. But so now we're just waiting like a pending decision from the New Hampshire Supreme Court. And that could be a couple months, typically, Daryl.
Average is about 4.
Okay. But alrighty, well, thank you for coming out. And
James Cleveland.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeene.com. FreeKeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeene.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.